This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ethiopian government warns of increased troop deployments as Tigray rebels refuse to withdraw from recently captured areas. New data suggests Johnson & Johnson vaccine works well against Delta variant and recipients do not need a booster shot. And at least 78 gunmen killed in military airstrikes in Nigeria's northwest state. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are what stories making headlines this hour. In business news, Nigeria plans to launch its own cryptocurrency in October of this year. And in your sport, East Africans reign supreme with 3 back-to-back gold medals in distance running at Tokyo Olympics. We begin the hour in Ethiopia, which has warned that it could deploy more troops to conflict-hit a northern region after rebels from Tigray rejected calls to pull back from neighboring towns they have recently captured. A state media report quoted the Amhara Region Security Office saying that an offensive would be launched on Saturday to deal with the threat posed by the rebels. The move follows the Tigray People's Liberation Front's attacks on army camps. Northern Ethiopia has witnessed fighting since November after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed sent troops to counter the TPLF forces that had reportedly attacked an Ethiopian National Defense Forces military camp in the Tigray region. Well, CGTN's Gurum Chala joins us from Addis Ababa for more on this developing story. Gurum, thank you so much for joining us. What is the latest news coming from the Tigray region, Gurum?
So there are two sides of a story coming out of the Tigray region state. One is about general insecurity and the ongoing conflicts between the Tigray militia and the Amhara regional force. As you have also said, in different locations there is war going on at the moment. So insecurity generally is the situation in the Tigray regional state. The other side to talk about is the humanitarian situation. Now things look to be improving by the day. After hundreds of trucks are still crossing borders filled with humanitarian assistance to be delivered for the Tigray regional state and the people affected by the war. So humanitarian situation, although is still bad in that regional state, it is improving now that delivery is being made. So the two situations, the humanitarian situation improving and also war continuing, are two important things to talk about in the Tigray regional state, Hannah.
Gurum, what more can you tell us about the government's warning that it will mobilize and deploy its entire defensive capability to the Tigray region?
So the Ethiopian government, by the way, still maintains what is known as a unilateral ceasefire, as it has promised to do it. One, because of humanitarian assistance to be delivered in that regional state. Two, because it wants to allow farmers in that regional state, as it is a rainy season in the country, as you might understand, to allow them to plow their lands so that in the future any kind of food shortage can be avoided. The third and the most important one, the government said, it is also to pave a way, perhaps, to start any peaceful negotiations. This is according to the government. But TPLF does not accept this, and they have vowed to continue the war and are still continuing. As you've said, the government sources are saying that it might deploy its full force against the TPLF force, which are, by the way, holding important locations such as Lalibela, historical location. But we should know that the defense force are not the ones which are vowing to do an offensive against the Tigray forces there. It is the militia in the Amhara regional state and the security head there who've been heard saying that we're going to start an offensive. We have stopped defensive work. So today, Saturday, they're going to start an offensive, a large-scale offensive against the TPLF force, which are holding some parts of the Amhara regional state in the north. So it is not the defense force, according to the people we have tried to speak to in the ENDF as well. So the government still maintains the unilateral ceasefire. We don't know until when, but we know that it is the northern force, the Amhara regional force, which is promising to start the offensive.
Guillaume, what do you foresee happening? What would the impact of this to the current situation be in Tigray?
Hannah, obviously, the escalation of conflict situation, war in general terms, is going to be making the country look bad and worse even. The humanitarian situation is going to also be worse at the same time. Human casualties, destruction of property, so many things to talk about. You should understand also that the international community, including the French government, the UN, perhaps Sudanese authorities, and others are calling for a peaceful resolution of the ongoing conflict in the northern part of Ethiopia. So anything away from a peaceful resolution of this ongoing conflict is going to have lots of destructions in the country. And this is not what Ethiopia wants. This is not what people affected by the war in the north still want to hear. Everybody wants to go back to a normal life, according to the information we have, especially civilians. Unfortunately, this is not going to be the case. Perhaps in the next days or weeks, we might see the worsening of the conflict in the north.
Thank you so much for following this story so closely for us. Guillaume Chala speaking to us from Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. Well, the United Nations says a ceasefire in Tigray on humanitarian grounds is needed now more than ever if a massive aid operation across front lines is to succeed. Earlier this week, the UN official warned that about 200,000 people had been displaced by fighting in neighboring Amhara region, along with more than 50,000 in Afar. CGTN's Enoch Sekolia tells us more.
Speaking in Geneva, the United Nations Emergency Relief Chief, Martin Griffiths, highlighted the urgency of the situation in the northern Ethiopian region. Many people are in dire need of humanitarian aid and assistance after months of fighting between government forces and those loyal to the Tigray People's Liberation Front, known as TPLF.
This war has to stop. This war has to end. We will, all of us, continue to try to make sure that those 100 trucks a day reach Mekelle, reach the beneficiaries. We will do everything we can to help the people affected in Amhara and Afar, while continuing the work in other parts of Ethiopia.
Griffiths also highlighted the logistical challenge of negotiating aid access into Tigray while violence in the area continues.
The Prime Minister has this unilateral ceasefire. He repeated his commitment to it twice on the two occasions we met. And I have no reason to doubt that at all. For the Tigrayans, who are extending the war into the south and east, into Afar and Amhara, they need to take into account that without that ceasefire, we will try to get those 100 trucks in, and we'll do everything we can. But it's going to be easier for the Tigrayan people if the war will stop.
Since conflict erupted last November, humanitarian needs have grown, and the UN has warned that the fighting could lead to famine in the region.
They need food. The harvest, which is recently being planted, is likely only to produce between a quarter and maximum a half of its likely production. So the need for food is going to go right through until next year.
The UN also confirmed about 178 aid trucks have reached Tigray's regional capital, Mekelle. Another 40 are expected to arrive soon. The agency says that the Ethiopian government is very keen in helping out in the humanitarian aid delivery efforts and the protection of civilians. Enoch Sekolia, CGTN.
We head over to South Africa now, where the Johnson & Johnson researchers have said that their vaccine is working well to prevent people from dying and developing severe symptoms. The doses were administered to the country's healthcare workers between mid-February and May. So far, close to 500,000 healthcare workers have been inoculated. The Johnson & Johnson team says their vaccine offers 91 to 96% protection against the Delta and Beta variants. The Johnson & Johnson vaccines are being used alongside Pfizer vaccines in South Africa. However, plans are underway to roll out China's Sinovac shots. So far, 8.3 million people have been inoculated in South Africa, which is the country most affected by COVID-19 on the continent. Let's Well, we stay in South Africa, where over 2 million people have so far tested positive for COVID-19. Health authorities have now begun vaccinating one of the country's most vulnerable communities, the homeless. A pilot project to give them the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has begun in Cape Town, the epicenter of the disease in that country. CGTN's Renee Delcarme has the details.
It's estimated that around 200,000 people live on South Africa's streets, a vulnerable community that's been hit extra hard by the COVID-19 pandemic.
The homeless people, it has been a very tough time, especially in the winter. They're very susceptible to flus and colds, and where they may have comorbidities already, TB, for example, or diabetes, many have HIV. You know, these are serious health issues, which then they can be impacted further by something like COVID.
31-year-old Robert Magadui of Mozambique is one of the first 14,000 homeless people in the city of Cape Town to be vaccinated.
I don't have a place to stay. I have to struggle to eat. So the pandemic has made it very difficult for me as far as being homeless is concerned. I'm living on the streets, I'm hungry, and I needed assistance, and here they gave me the vaccine.
The Western Cape government says it will prioritise the use of the single-dose Johnson & Johnson jab in its drive to vaccinate remote, rural and homeless communities.
For homeless, we are using for J&J because it's a one dose. Because with a Pfizer, it means that you have to come back again 42 days. So we have to provide J&J, and I'm glad that now we'll be pushing more to be used, and also in other homeless shelters, because we don't want to bother people to come, because they will forget anyway about their return dates.
Homeless people in South Africa who want to be vaccinated will be able to sign up whether or not they have formal identity documents, and they'll be entered in South Africa's electronic vaccine data system.
So today's been amazing, just to see so many people coming and excited to be able to access the vaccine.
I've been 2 years on the street, and I'm very happy and relieved to get my vaccine.
A sentiment now shared by many homeless people across South Africa's mother city. Renee Delcarme, CGTN, Cape Town.
The World Health Organization has been calling for a temporary halt in the administering of COVID-19 vaccine booster shots. The global health body insists on making doses available to countries where fewer people have been inoculated. While the debate is ongoing, people in developed countries are already going for third vaccine booster shots. Here's CGTN's Wanja Mungai with more.
People living in developed countries are preparing themselves to receive booster shots. This will help to protect them from the Delta variant and a dreaded fourth wave of coronavirus infections. The World Health Organization is, however, opposed to the idea. It wants developed countries to first assist those that are most in need of inoculations.
Rather than give boosters to healthy individuals who are fully vaccinated, it makes much more sense to try to get those vaccines to populations that haven't been vaccinated yet.
The United Nations Health Body has been advocating for vaccine equality globally. This is to ensure that people in poorer parts of the world like Africa get vaccines just as those in developed countries. The UN says that so far only 2% of Africa's entire population has received jabs. Recently, the UN chief Antonio Guterres highlighted the need to double vaccine production so as to achieve 11 billion doses for the vaccination of 70% of the global population. The call on a moratorium on third booster shots is part of the United Nations drive to ensure vaccine equitability. However, some medics are opposed to the idea.
I think banning boosters is a mistake because it also fails to understand and acknowledge that there is medical nuance here, right? This is not a one size fits all. This is not a yes or no kind of question. This is a depends dramatically on the person's risk.
Gina Welch is among those willing to go an extra mile to secure immunity. She has had to change vaccine providers just to acquire her booster dose.
really boiled down to the fact that I have liver disease, I have asthma, so I have comorbidities. I'm young, I'm healthy other than that, but I feel good, but I don't like that I had to go in and kind of lie to get it. It made me feel uncomfortable about it, but I feel more protected.
Israel was the first country to introduce third booster vaccines to its senior citizens. So far, 2,000 immunosuppressed people have received their extra dose. The debate on whether to put a hold on the third shot or not is clearly not dampening the spirit of those determined to get the extra shot of protection. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
Nigeria's pharmaceutical sector has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, leading to a hike in the prices of drugs. The bulk of pharmaceutical raw materials and finished products used in the country are imported. Disruptions in the global supply chain caused by the pandemic, as well as a scarcity of foreign exchange in Nigeria, have seriously affected the country's pharmaceutical industry. Correspondent Deji Badmus has more on that story.
Rejoice Emeka has always come to this pharmaceutical store for her drugs and other medical needs. But towards the end of last year, she realized something had started changing. The prices of many drugs and other medical essentials had begun to rise. About 8 months on, the prices are still going up.
It's very obvious that price is increasing every day, day by day. For example, I came here to buy diaper. The diaper I usually buy 4,600. In fact, it started from 4,100 naira. It kept increasing. To my greatest surprise today, it's now 4,800.
But pharmaceutical store owners say they are not to blame for the increasing prices and that they are also feeling the pain as well.
Most of the time, the money you have, you will sell the product. If you go to the market, you buy the same product, you will discover that the price has gone higher than the one you purchased before.
Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic last year, pharmacies in Nigeria have faced challenges in getting their supplies and restocking. This has led to an increase in the prices of generic drugs.
There's two main sources of drugs, especially even including active pharmaceutical ingredients, raw materials, India and China. China was the first to shut down, then India eventually. Not only was there a shutdown, but India, for example, prohibited or limited the exportation of certain of their products. They reserved them to satisfy their domestic market before going into export. So that mainly had some effect. We received shocks shown by not only lack, but also delay. Even when there was a response, there was delay. But this second, as you said, or third wave, is starting a new level of activity.
Only about 40% of the drugs that Nigeria needs are manufactured locally, and the bulk of the raw materials used in their production still have to come from abroad. Even with massive funding support from the Central Bank of Nigeria to help them bridge the drug supply gap, local pharmaceutical manufacturers say they still face many challenges.
CBN has done well, but what they've done is like a drop of water in the ocean. It's not going to significant change in a manner that will be so obvious, but it's going to do. Secondly is that most of those who have accessed these funds are using them to build new facilities or expand their facilities, and those things don't happen in one day. I can tell you that many of the companies haven't even gotten the foreign exchange to import the materials. It's also from CBN.
With the onset of the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic across the world, it's not clear when the drug global supply chain will stabilize. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
We say in Nigeria, where the military says it has killed at least 78 gunmen in an airstrike in the northwest of the country. The militants are said to have abducted more than 1,000 students from schools and colleges since last December. About 300 of the school children are still in captivity. Meanwhile, Nigeria's northwestern state of Kaduna has announced that it will suspend the resumption of learning in both public and private schools across the state as security operations against armed bandits proceed. Several incidents of student kidnappings have been reported in Kaduna in recent months. The country's security forces have intensified operations against armed militants in recent weeks. Well, Tsem Kende is in Jos, Nigeria for us, and he's been following up on that story. Tsem, thank you so much for being with us on the program. What more can you tell us, Tsem, about the Nigerian military's latest aerial bombardment in the northwest of the country?
Well, indeed, the recent bombardments, I would like to say here that it's just one out of several bombardments by the military. But I also like to say here that the president earlier in June this year visited Borno State, the epicenter of insurgency, where he gave troops of the armed forces marching orders to end insecurity. So the recent bombardments might just be hidden to the directive, the presidential directive. Northwest Nigeria is made up of 5 states which are renowned for kidnapping for ransom and banditry, talking about Kaduna, Kano, Katsina, Jigawa, and Sokoto states. Interestingly, the president of the country, Muhammadu Buhari, is from one of these states, Katsina precisely. So the military is basically increasing its bite against enemies of peace, talking about the insurgents and the bandits who have been operating in these states for quite a while now.
Tsem, what is the military expected specifically to achieve? And could you just give us a little bit of what you might know of the timeline of how long these airstrikes might continue?
Well, I would like I might not. How long this might will go on remains still with the military. It's confidential information, and it's within their purview. It's about them to answer. But the goal basically is to ensure that Nigeria is safe, especially the northern region that has been plagued with several security challenges. The several area components that make up northern Nigeria, talking about the northwest, the north central, and the northeast, are plagued with different challenges, security challenges. We have the northeast ravaging several states in the northeastern part of the country, and the farmer-herder clashes within the north central region, while we have banditry and kidnapping for ransom within the northwest region. So basically, the military is gearing up to ensure that these security challenges are dealt with. They are increasing on their synergy as well. The aerial bombardments are being supported by ground troops who are ensuring that as the Air Force, carries out its bombardments, troops on ground, especially the infantry soldiers, carry out, end up with the elements, the enemies of peace who have been terrorizing and affecting these areas, lives and properties for a while now.
Kaduna State has suspended the resumption of both public and private schools across the state as security operations against armed bandits proceed. What do you know of how long this could take, to Tsem, and how insecurity has further impacted education in this region?
Yeah, security affecting education, like every other sector, yes, it would affect education to some extent. But I'm also in touch with very senior officials of the government there who say that, look, the move is in obedience to security assessments and security advisories by agencies. So what it has done is to ensure that primarily security of lives and property is maintained first, which is the primary responsibility of government. But the government is also saying that, look, what it has done is very temporal. It doesn't hope that this would go on for a very long while. It's also trying to ensure that it maintains a single curriculum, a single educational system across boards. So what is happening is just, it might be called off tomorrow. They might rescind on that decision just tomorrow or in a few hours from now. So basically, it's in the interest of all. It's to ensure that lives and property are guaranteed. I'd also say that Kaduna State is renowned for education. It's a center of learning. It has several educational institutions. So the aim of the government generally is to ensure that it's not to bring harm to anybody. It's just to ensure that lives and property are guaranteed and education continues very well. But like I said, officials are looking at that changing very soon. It hopes that it won't be for long. And basically, it's listening to instructions or advisories from security agencies.
Thank you so much for that, Tessem Makinde, speaking to us from Jos, Nigeria. Well, let's now take a short break and return. More news making headlines, including Libya's interim Prime Minister Dbeibeh orders government agencies to create jobs for militia members. And Tunisian President Kais Saied urges promises to lower prices of essential drugs.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Aden Shirishi, Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching News Making Headlines right here on Africa Live. Libya's interim Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Dbeibeh has taken the first step towards addressing the challenges of resolving the future of militia in the country. On Thursday, he instructed 5 ministries to create government jobs for qualified members of the country's numerous militia groups. Well, for more analysis on this, we are joined by Bassem Ali, PhD researcher at the Institute of Arab Research and Studies, who is also a journalist at Ahram Online in Cairo. Thank you so much for joining us, Bassem. What do you think has motivated the Prime Minister in including the militia into government?
This is mainly one of the key requirements of finalizing the peace process that started with last year's ceasefire. As you probably know, in the 1990s, the United Nations launched what we know as the DDR programs, which involves demobilizing, disarming, and reintegrating militias in state institutions, especially security ones, as a prerequisite or as a key step in terms of ending the conflict. So that has been very important in order to make sure that these militias would not return to conflict once again, and this would come in return of a number of incentives that I think the Libyan parties would discuss together. If they haven't so far, they would discuss together in the coming weeks and months.
Bassem, what are the chances of success and potential challenges of such a move?
Well, that's a very important question. Let's not forget that militias in any part of the world has been doing this job for long years. In Libya, for example, militant groups has been present on the political arena for almost 10 years now, since Muammar Gaddafi was ousted after 2011's popular uprising. So they don't have the kind of skills which would allow them to live life as civilians do. They are not educated. They have always carried weapons, and they lived most of their lives either hiding in the mountains or hiding underground or carrying weapons or involved in armed clashes. So it is the responsibility of the Libyan unity government to provide social, economic, developmental, and even educational opportunities for militias, for militiamen, as well as their families, in order to give them strong reason to change their lives completely and start a new one. This I think is the main challenge in that case. So it's all about turning militias into ordinary citizens, and in between you have so much issues to discuss and consider how they can be solved.
What would the impact of this inclusion of militias on Libya and the region be?
Well, the withdrawal of foreign troops and involvement or reintegration of militias in state institutions has been a key demand by regional and international actors. The United Nations, for example, has been repeatedly calling for this process to take place. Libya's neighbors and even even Western governments around the world have been all keen to see this achievement taking place. So I think if the process is finalized and successfully completed till the end, this would be great news for the whole world. Let's not forget that armed conflict, especially one in Libya, has brought a number of challenges for all the countries surrounding Libya in the past years, including arms smuggling, human trafficking, migration crisis, and so forth. So an end to the presence of armed groups in the North African state would be something that everyone around the world would welcome and would be happy to see.
Bassem, thank you so much for all that. Bassem Ali, PhD researcher at the Institute of Arab Research and Studies, also a journalist at Ahram Online in Cairo. Well, the Tunisian president is calling for the lowering of prices of medicines as the North African nations battles the coronavirus pandemic. This comes after President Kais Saied implemented wide-ranging political measures. Adil Chouachi has more details from Tunis.
President Saied received the Director General of the Tunisian Central Pharmacy, the President of the National Council of Pharmacists, and the Secretary General of the Union of Pharmacists. The head of state urged private pharmacists to reduce by as much as possible the prices of medicines in the country.
I do not doubt that private pharmacies can contribute and support the national effort at this historical moment by reducing the prices of medicines. Help with your own means, and because it's your responsibility to help the poor and disadvantaged people.
best on nature's stage, even the sideshows are bound to captivate and amaze. Join CGTN from August 9th through 18th as we take in the sights, sounds, and adventure of 2021's Mara Migration.
Kenyans who studied in China say that they have gained immense technical skills, knowledge, and enthusiasm that will play constructive roles in Kenya's development efforts. They say that the people-to-people ties between Nairobi and Beijing are bearing fruit. CGTN's Inex Akoya met some of them and sent this report.
It's moving really fast. My name is Grace Kyoko, and I studied in Beijing from 2016 to 2019 July. Yeah, and I was at the Institute of Zoology in Beijing under Professor Li Shuqiang. And yeah, so I did actually biodiversity of spiders.
Grace Kyoko was busy capturing spiders when we arrived at the National Museum of Kenya's Zoo Gardens.
You can find, as you see in the webs, you can see the webs, mostly in crevices. Spiders occupy literally every habitat, from caves to ground.
She says her knowledge about spiders improved a great deal after undertaking a master's degree in China, and she believes the Chinese eating style has also played a big role in her trade.
Especially the use of the chopsticks for one, because when you're catching spiders, they move quite very fast. So the fact that you're used to using the chopsticks, it kind of stabilizes your hand. For me, that worked for me, because when you're catching like a spider, it runs off, so you have to move very fast to catch it before it runs away.
Since 2015, China has provided around 67,000 training opportunities for Kenya, according to the Chinese embassy in Kenya. In 2019, a total of 2,400 Kenyan students were enrolled in Chinese learning institutions, and more Kenyans are seeking higher education opportunities in China, which has become the destination most favored by African students. The relations between China and Kenya has been on an upward spiral, and for Kenyans who schooled in the Far East country, the benefits can only be mutual and far-reaching.
My name is Vivian Kadhambi. I am a plant botanist, a plant scientist here. I do conservation that involves the collection, preservation, and the documentation, as well as educating people about the importance of plants and them conserving them. I went to China through a Kenyan-Chinese collaboration called Sajorek. They had a collaboration between Kenyan students and the Chinese to improve on the biodiversity of Kenya. Because in China, the biodiversity is huge, and to get to interact with plant scientists who have worked for so long, getting to know the tips on how to easily identify plants, to engage in the natural walks and the ecosystems, it was interesting as we did our fieldwork both in China and in Kenya.
My name is Dr. Mbuni Juvenalis. I work in the National Museums of Kenya as the Botanic Garden Manager. When I went to China in studying in Wuhan Botanical Garden, I realized that the garden is well maintained, of which I've tried to bring back at home, whereby comfortably now I can be able to say that men and more visitors have come back in visiting our garden in terms of education, in terms of research.
Outside the classroom, Kenyan students in China also have a unique opportunity to learn more about the whole of Chinese society. They live with the Chinese, go to Chinese restaurants, and visit shopping malls. These interactions make them have a deeper understanding of the meteoric transformation of Chinese society.
I like the transport system because it's regulated by the government, for one, so it's relatively cheap to move around. And they actually obey most of the traffic laws and everything. So it was quite interesting, despite the fact that it's really crowded in the subway and in the buses, but the transport system is really efficient.
Grace Kyoko believes that it will be good if Kenya and other African countries borrow a leaf from China. Enoch Sikole, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, time for another break when we return your sport news, including East Africans reign supreme with 3 back-to-back gold medals in distance running at Tokyo Olympics.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Kenya's Perez Jepchirchir put the icing on a golden day for East Africa at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics when she won the women's marathon in Sapporo in the early hours of this morning. Jepchirchir outdueled compatriot Bridget Koskei in the final minutes to claim her country's 2nd consecutive gold medal in the event. Koskei took silver, and Molly Seyday of the United States, competing in just her 3rd marathon after moving up from shorter distances, claimed bronze. Kenya's Koskei and the world record holder and world champion Ruth Chepngetich has been favorites to win gold on Saturday, but it was 2-time world half marathon champion Jepchirchir who came out on top after breaking out of a virtual tie with Koskei at the 40-kilometer mark, where she decided to make her move. Jepchirchir finished with a time of 2 hours, 27 minutes and 20 seconds, 16 seconds ahead of Koskei and 26 seconds in front of Sedale. Earlier, Kenyan Faith Chepngetich and Uganda's Joshua Cheptegei delivered gold medals in the women's 1,500 and men's 5,000 meters as East Africans stamped their dominance in distance running. CGTN's Sadiq Shaban was in Iten, Kenya, and brings us more.
The women's 1,500 meters finals at the Tokyo Olympic Games was perhaps the most watched athletics event in Kenya, as the country's Olympic defending champion Faith Kipyegon went head-to-head with the newly crowned 5,000 meters gold medalist Sifan Hassan of the Netherlands. The two controlled the pace from early on, and perhaps capitalizing on Sifan's apparent fatigue from running the 5,000 meters final, Faith Kipyegon floored it with 150 meters to go and won her 2nd consecutive gold medal, sending a section of Kenyans who were watching the race into a frenzy.
They started with a lot of tempo, especially Sifan Hassan, who was very close to Faith. But in the last minute, when she sprinted away, we were very happy, especially with the winning margin. As people of this region called Home of Champions, we are very happy and we celebrate her victory.
In the finals of the men's 5,000 meters, the world record holder and 10,000 meters Olympic champion Joshua Cheptegei returned for another golden opportunity. The Ugandan outpaced the competition in the home stretch to win the gold medal ahead of Canada's Mo Ahmed and American Paul Chelimo, whose family watched the event in Kenya and spoke about the event.
We thank God for the bronze, and we really say congratulations to him, because as a family we got a bronze and he carries our name, so what else can we say? We're really happy, and we're delighted to be here today as family, and we'll say congratulations.
A strong finish is expected from African athletes on the penultimate day of the track events at the Olympic Games, when the finals of the women's 10,000 meters and men's 1,500 meters come hot in the heels of the women's marathon finals on Saturday. Sadiq Shaban, CGTN, in Iten, Kenya.
We cross over to Kampala, Uganda, where jubilant scenes greeted the country's 2nd gold medal of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics when Joshua Cheptegei reigned supreme in the men's 5,000 meters final. Here's CGTN's Leon Sanyangi with the report.
The sounds of celebration could be heard around Lugogo, the main sporting area in the capital Kampala, As expected, Joshua Cheptegei crossed the finish line of the 5,000-meter race fast, handing Uganda a second gold medal with a time of 12 minutes 58.15 seconds. He delivered the victory under immeasurable pressure from Ahmed of Canada and the USA's Paul Chelimo, who finished second and third respectively. Cheptegei had led from the start but dropped to fifth place going into the third lap. With 2 laps to go, he made his move and reassumed the lead. His final dash to the finish line was of a man truly determined to win a gold medal after falling short in the 10,000-meter race just a week ago, where he won silver. Cheptegei's teammate Jacob Kiplimo would finish fifth despite being a contender. Now with an Olympic title in the bag, Cheptegei has laid claim to being one of the greatest long-distance runners of all time. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Well, as Tokyo 2020 comes to an end, the focus will soon turn to the host of the next Summer Olympics, Paris for 2024. Organizers are promising a games full of innovation that will also be more accessible to the public. CGTN's Daniel Williams has more.
Tokyo 2020 has been far from what organisers envisioned when the city won the right to host the Games. The COVID-19 pandemic has taken a significant toll, from a year-long delay to arenas free of spectators. But as the Summer Olympics baton is passed to Paris 2024, it is hoped by then the pandemic will be in the past. It means Paris organisers are pushing ahead with plans to make the Games more publicly accessible. From an opening ceremony that will take place at different locations across the city, to marathon and cycling events that will allow the general public to race on the same course on the same day as the athletes.
I think the Games should be open to everyone, and we have to find ways in the coming 3 years to propose conditions by doing the marathon during the Games time, by having the possibility to have an experience during the opening ceremony open to the city with hundreds of thousand people.
Paris staff were allowed a ringside seat at Tokyo 2020. In all, some 50 Paris personnel were allowed to integrate with Tokyo employees to gain organisational experience. They hope they can also learn more at the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics.
Every host of the Games tried to build on the success of the past editions and look what they are like a takeaway and make sure that the next edition will be better. So I'm already looking forward to being in Beijing in 22, because I'm sure that they will find ways to also increase and maybe improve the system. And for us, we will have to observe it carefully and make sure that in 2024 will be even best and better than what Beijing did.
One of the key features of Tokyo 2020 has been the introduction of a whole host of new sports, from skateboarding and surfing to BMX freestyle and sport climbing. And organisers of Paris 2024 want to build on that success.
I really loved here to attend to basketry, to skateboarding, because they offer a new experience in terms of music programmation, in terms of the rhythm of the event. It's new, it's dynamic, it's fresh, and I think it's important that the Games are able to evolve also and to connect with this young audience.
Participe à la grande histoire des Jeux. With the Tokyo Olympics running a year later than scheduled, the race is on for Paris 2024 organisers to deliver a successful Games. But it already promises to be one of the most innovative yet.
Well, let's recap on the hour's top stories. Ethiopia has warned that it will deploy more troops into the Tigray region. This follows a failure by rebels in the northern region to pull back from neighboring towns they recently captured. A state media report quoted by the Amhara Region Security Office says that an offensive could be launched by Saturday to deal with the threat posed by rebels. The move is also in response to the Tigray People's Liberation Front's attacks on army camps. Johnson & Johnson researchers in South Africa say their vaccine has been proven to be effective in preventing people from dying and developing severe symptoms. The J&J vaccine doses were administered to the country's healthcare workers between mid-February and May. So far, close to 500,000 healthcare workers have been inoculated. The Johnson & Johnson team says their vaccine offers 91 to 96% protection against the Delta and Beta variants. The J&J vaccines are being used alongside Pfizer doses in South Africa. However, plans are also underway to roll out China's Sinovac shots. And finally, the Nigerian military says that it has killed at least 78 gunmen in an airstrike in the northwest of the country. The militants are said to have abducted more than 1,000 students from schools and colleges since last December. About 300 of the school children are still in captivity. Meanwhile, Nigeria's northwestern state of Kaduna has announced that it will suspend the resumption of learning in both public and private schools across the state as security operations against armed bandits continue. Several incidents of student kidnappings have been reported in Kaduna in recent months. The country's security forces have intensified their operations against armed militants. Well, that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember that you can send your feedback to contact on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. From me, Hannah Viviers, and the rest of the Africa Live team, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time.